What's up, gang? Welcome to Room and Board. My name is Chris George.
I said there ain't no rest for the wicked.
I don't know if I could do that Borderlands effect or not. And the FOMO police are here to put another Kickstarter in handcuffs. They had to get one last $1 million campaign before the end of the year. They couldn't let GameFound get it. It's Kickstarter's time to shine. And of course, we are talking about Borderlands, Mr. Torg's Arena of Badassery. That's the reason 90% of you clicked this video. The other 10%, well, they clicked just because they saw my handsome face, and you're the real heroes. But today we're talking specifically about 5 reasons you shouldn't back Borderlands, Mr. Torg's Arena of Badassery. And special reason number 6 is if you aren't a badass at all. So that eliminates me from contention. Tiny Tina's Robot Tea Party wasn't enough for the Borderlands crew, and they decided to come back at it, this time with a miniatures-heavy game, so obviously it has raised over $1 million, making a board game mode of arguably maybe the best mode from the video game as well. And for those of you who don't know, this is a series that I do on board game campaigns that have raised over $1 million and not a penny less. I'll try to put this out exactly at $999,000 just because of that statement. But the reason being twofold, or a fewfold, pew-pew-fold, is that there has to be some sort of monetary criteria for these sorts of things, so I don't just bish and moan about every single board game out there. Like Nathan Explosionen, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is very concerned about. Well, no, it's not a typo. It's not because his keyboard was just covered in questionable substances, just riddled with it, really. That's not the reason. It's just that Nathan Explosion with one N was already taken. So what do you think you should call yourself? Nathan Explosion 1? That's ludicrous. Nathan Explosion 42069? That's, well, no, that's probably a bit too much on the nose. The real Nathan Explosion? That, oh, yeah, no, that would have been better. That one was probably already taken as well. Anyway, Mr. Explosionen, if you're watching, it was YouTube who deleted your comment and not me, because, well, I would have pinned it. I also love that he clearly posted this more than once, trying to get through YouTube's filters, because I caught the one that had the @ sign on the word lame, and changing it to bishing. Just desperate for me to know that I should get a real job. I mean, I'd like to, but where else could I work so hard for such little money? Probably retail, realistically. But anyway, that tangent aside, back to the conversation at hand. Board games are very cool, but cost a lot of money. And while you may want everything, you're not necessarily going to enjoy everything. So this is a series where I take a look at a game, at both what excites me and what doesn't, and hopefully can serve as a litmus test to see if you're actually interested in the game itself, or if you're just getting swept up in the campaign. And if you are, hey, that's totally cool. I get swept up in literally every single campaign that I look at. But I'm here to make sure that you are equally as excited when the game arrives at your door as you are now. And I think that's important when you're spending a whole bunch of money on something. And well, if money is no object to you, well, I now have a Patreon. But this is a really interesting one for me because I went through a whole gamut of emotions looking at this one because I saw it advertised to me and I thought, oh, Borderlands, yeah, they've done board games like that before. I'm sure it'll be all right, but I'm probably not interested in it. And then I saw the campaign had launched and was nearing the threshold for one of these videos. And I thought, oh, I'm going to have to look into this a lot more sooner than I thought for, you know, my usual Monday crowdfunding countdown where I take a look at everything. And immediately when I started looking into it, I realized, wait a minute, you single-celled troglodyte, this is a Borderlands board game with cool miniatures. And so naturally my interest was piqued. Because Borderlands is probably one of my favorite video game series out there. Dark Souls is probably my other one, to be fair. But it's an exceptional couch co-op, meaning you can play with a friend in the room beside you and go through the campaign together, sitting on the couch. And not only that, you get to shoot funny, evil, cartoony villains in the head. And it's generally a pretty funny game all throughout in that sort of overblown, unnecessary way. Plus, you get to constantly level up and pick up endless weapons with different elements that are basically all the same, but also feel completely different as well. It is a fantastic series. I've played Borderlands 1, 2, and the pre-sequel, and having just inherited a PS4 from my brother-in-law, I'm very excited to get and play Borderlands 3 as well. And so I have great memories of this game. I remember playing with my brother and with a number of friends, and when we were done the game, there's still this fantastic arena mode where you throw yourselves in there, you take out hordes of bad guys, as many as you can, and you get weapons and loot equal to whatever your level is at the time. It's a really fun, dynamic mode, and I actually think it is the perfect setting for a game like this. Which, although campaign games, sprawling narrative campaign games, are the norm these days, I think the arena feels more like what the core of Borderlands is. Go somewhere and shoot everything that moves for XP and loot. It's also really nice to see when you look at the campaign that they're offering this extra early bird. So they already had an early bird offer. If you didn't get it, it was the Wattle Gobbler. But if you didn't get it, they recognized that a bunch of people jumped in later. So to fight that feeling of, oh, I didn't get the early bird on time, they're also offering an additional Steve the Psycho early bird, which runs until December 13th. And I think that's great. I think that is an awesome step for a campaign to make. It's nice to get this free little extra thing that you'd have to buy later on as its own separate pack. And I think it's great that they recognized, oh yeah, maybe our marketing didn't get out to everybody in the 48-hour time period. It certainly didn't get out that way to me, so it's nice to have that thing on offer as well. And then when you're looking through the villains, it's really fun and it pulls on your love of the IP to see things that you recognize. One of the bosses, Nine Toes, is probably one of the most iconic villains for me, because it's the first villain you fight in the first game. Like the first main one that has its own intro sign, the starring Nine Toes or whatever. I'm pretty sure it's the first one that gets its own spotlight, so to speak. And so even just seeing that little Nine Toes card got me excited. I was like, oh yeah, I remembered all of the fun that I've had with this video game series. And then in terms of the board game mechanics, I'm actually pretty taken with their React system. I think it's really cool. And this is something that they're promoting pretty heavily on the campaign page, are using our React system. But what it is basically you start with a number of tokens that represent both your hit points and the dice that you will get to roll whenever you take a specific action. So the green dice are D12s, the yellow ones are D8s, the red ones are D6, and so obviously rolling a green dice, you have a higher chance of dealing more damage and killing those monsters than if you rolled a yellow one. So having to choose when to use those tokens is neat. And then you use those same tokens to defend, and you kind of risk one. And if you don't hit the bar for the defense, then you lose that token. It gets downgraded to a red token. Or if you only have red tokens, then you die and you have to respawn. And you respawn by paying money at the new U system, paying money tokens that you've looted, and if you're out of money, then you can't respawn and the whole group loses. I think it's a little too bad that I didn't see any way for a buddy to respawn you like they do in the game. You can heal your partner. But honestly, judging how the game plays, your buddy would probably just get ripped to shreds by the hordes of monsters that have surrounded you and have subsequently killed you. But the React tokens can also act as the fight for your life mechanic. When you die in the video game, you still have a chance to kill one baddie and then you revive. In this is the same way. You have to hold back a token, so you can't use it on your turn, but you have to wait till the enemy's turn, hoping that they'll attempt to kill you, or guessing that they'll attempt to kill you, and then you can use your token to heal yourself fully, regenerate all your shields, and come back in action. And I think that's sort of last gasp and emerging from beyond the grave and the chance to save yourself, that creates, I think, a really dynamic and exciting setting for the game. I mean, it's Borderlands. It's badass. It's a badass IP, and of course, I'm going to be excited about it. But you're not here to hear my excitement. Well, maybe you are. I think that's equally valid in helping make a decision and talking about this game. No, it's not. Think of Nathan Explosionen. You know what your audience wants, and it's time for the bishing and the moaning and the griping to begin. So here are my 5 reasons you shouldn't back Borderlands. If potentially you're on the fence, hopefully this will help you make up your mind. And reason number 5 is that the video game is gonna be better. And I've talked a lot about intellectual properties throughout the course of this series, and it makes sense that these existing properties that already have a fan base and a following are ripe for the picking when it comes to making a killing in the Kickstarter scene. So perhaps this may feel like a retread of a previous video, but this campaign doesn't necessarily make me want to play Borderlands the board game. It does, but really it makes me want to play Borderlands in general. And it's tough because I've yet to play the third Borderlands, or Borderlands 3, I should say, since I played the pre-sequel. And so perhaps if I had already played all of the video games to death and I'd worn it out, this might be a nice way to jump back into the scene. And let's be clear, board games and video games are different mediums. There's something great to be said about the tactile nature versus screens. Like, that's not this discussion. But I think a lot of the stuff that appeals to me about Borderlands is going to be less fun in the board game setting. Or less effective. I mean, I still think there's a lot that works. I really love the loot system in this game right now. You draw loot tokens from a bag every time a baddie dies, and you have a chance to upgrade this bag, and they might drop legendary items. When that legendary drop happens, it's gonna feel really cool. And I also really like the skill trees as well. I think the skill trees are gonna be a nice, easy progression to implement, and they'll feel, kind of seamless. But with this, I'm missing the humor. I'm missing the shock and awe, the adrenaline pumping moments that the video game provides me. I'm gonna miss meeting a new enemy for the first time and trying to figure out where its weak points are and targeting those weak points with precision and getting those critical hits to whittle down its health, and exploding hordes of bad guys as I search through a new area and figure out how the maps will all benefit my playstyle. I see glimpses of them in the game, but I think that's going to be more added on by the people playing it and in your own mind and in your own familiarity with the IP and the world than necessarily coming from the game itself, if that makes sense. So this point is to get you to stop and take a look at the game itself and make sure you know what you're getting and what the differences are and how they feel to you. The characters also don't feel as different to me here as they do in the video game. One thing that I really love, and why I've replayed it a number of times, is because I've played through with every character, figuring out their skill trees. And like I said, I like the skill trees, and I like how they're implemented. I just don't think that it's going to give me that feeling of difference as I might have felt in the game. So I think the game will capture some of the things that make Borderlands great, but I don't think it's going to capture all of them, because it's a different medium, right? So make sure you really know what you're getting, and if that matches up with your expectations as well. Anyway, reason number 4 is that it's Christmas. And this is a weird one. This is season specific because we are recording this when it is mid-January. No, because we are recording this, it's mid-December. I know months. The holiday season, and you may not celebrate Christmas, but this is a time where lots of gifts are going around and lots of gifts are being given. And you might think this point is leading in an altruistic way. Me saying, take that money and buy something really special for someone you care about. Be the true Santa Claus. Take Mrs. Claus out for a nice meal. No, the real Mrs. Claus. I'm not talking about your specific partner. Santa Claus has been neglecting her something fierce for years. Taking her for granted, making her bake all those cookies every single day. And you are the only one who can show her the true spirit of Christmas. The spirit of giving. Anyway, that's not the point I'm making. We're not that generous. Why spend money on others when you can spend it on yourself, right? I mean, that's also a really nice thing to do if you want to take that money and spend it on someone else. Hey, you probably feel great. But also, I'm realistic. And if you're contemplating buying yourself a treat specifically for Christmas or for the holidays, which you absolutely should do, you've worked hard this year and you deserve it. You deserve to feel special and treat yourself. You might as well treat yourself for something you can get right now. I know there's a big board game out there that you haven't gotten because it exists, or because you think you can get it used for $10 to $20 less, or you don't want to order it and go get it, or you think somebody else will buy it for you. Whatever the reason. But if your own reason to yourself is that you're going to buy it just because you're treating yourself for the holidays, then actually treat yourself for the holidays with something you can enjoy over the holidays. Because I think it's pretty easy to justify a purchase online, right? I think it's easier than in person. That's why this series exists. That dopamine hit that you get when you back something, and then the continued dopamine spikes when you get those emails every day of the updates, or however frequently they update. It's fun, it is. But what might be more fun is playing a new game right now, or over the Christmas period, or whatever you decide to treat yourself with this budget. So here's the question. Would you get more enjoyment this holiday season by buying Borderlands and being excited about it coming, that's great, or spending it on that other thing that you've wanted to get for a while but haven't. And this feels like I'm going against my FOMO MO. I'm encouraging you to spend, but you know what? It's been 2 years of a pandemic, and sure, treat yourself. I don't care. I'm breaking my whole series. It's going up in smoke! But in keeping with this series, does that necessarily have to be this game? I don't know. I do know that reason number 3 you shouldn't back Borderlands is if you hate Zombicide. And I've used this as a comparison before as well, and this is different than Zombicide, but it is really close to Zombicide. I mean, it's got all the things in Zombicide that I like, and I hate to say it, because this is supposed to talk you out of it, but I think that this might appeal to me more than Zombicide. You get loot every time you kill someone instead of just when you spend an action to search. I mean, what could be better than that, really? I don't even need additional points. It really seemed like I was ramping up for something. But I think if you've ever played Zombicide and gone, meh, this isn't right for me, then don't get Borderlands. It's probably not the right game for you. Because in essence, it's fighting off hordes of bad guys and then rolling dice to see if you hit or not. That's it. Like I said, I really like the react system. I like the 3 different types of dice that you can use and that the damage will scale or the chances that you'll hit will scale. But in essence, that's kind of like having a weapon that lets you roll 4 dice instead of 2, right? So I think the comparison to Zombicide is an easy one to make, but I think it also is important to make it as well. This very well could have existed in the same system as Zombicide, and it would probably feel very similar. Get your loot, level up your character, even the skill trees feel comparable to me because you're kind of just choosing between a couple different options. Anyway, I don't want to belabor this point. They're very similar, and it's also very similar to my point number 2, which is that there is a lot of dice rolling. I mean, it's not all dice rolling. I think there are some fun tactics on top of it in terms of positioning and determining range and where you need to be, and the spotlight mechanic I find is particularly interesting because one character will have the spotlight and that's what all the enemies will chase after, and they'll run after that one person. And then it's only when they make an attack, if they can't hit that person, will they attack someone else in range as well. I think that's going to be really neat in terms of manipulating the board and rearranging the characters, etc. But the react system, which I am a fan of, means you're pretty much rolling for everything. You're rolling for your attacks. You're rolling for your defenses. You're rolling to move and loot. No, you're not. I'm just kidding. You don't have to roll to move and loot. But the game is primarily rolling attack and defense. Like, I wish there were more mechanics that I could talk about and emphasize what I think is the primary structure and primary feeling of the game, but that's it. It's a very simple game, which might appeal to you and it might be great to draw in new people, or that simplicity might push you away. But it's just a bunch of enjoyable skill checks. And so in a sense, I think if you don't like dice rolling games, you're probably not going to like Zombicide, and then these 2 points could fit together. And are these points similar because I think it's a good game and I'm finding it hard to talk myself out of it? For the most part? Possibly. That could possibly be the case. But even if you check out the example turn on the video that they have, Learn to Play has a video of how to play the game, there's a lot of defense checks. So many that he's like, yeah, I'm not going to go through them all because there's going to be a lot. Because there are hordes of bad guys. There's going to be hordes of rolling. And if that feels fun to you, fantastic. If that feels, I'm not sure, don't go for it. But the reason why I personally am not getting this game is our reason number 1. The number 1 reason you shouldn't back is because this campaign represents FOMO at its finest. Because here's the thing, this game looks fun. It really does. I really might have backed this one. And I don't back a lot of things, but I do love this IP so much. And I love it so much that I don't care about the other points that I've mentioned. Having a board game version of Borderlands would be fun. But what I can't get behind is the obvious upsell tactics of not allowing the base game to have any of the stretch goals. It is so disappointing to me to see. For the 140 backers that are currently at that level, just don't do it. Just stop. I guarantee you, I mean, as much as I can guarantee anything, that the $35 that you save off of MSRP, if the game store that you buy your games at ever goes by MSRP, because I always feel like it's a little under anyway, that is going to be the shipping cost, if not more, because these shipping costs are estimates and they can change, and you need to be really excited about getting the game, or you need to be getting some sort of deal to warrant purchasing it at a level which doesn't give you anything extra than something you could go into the store and get yourself later on for probably cheaper. And I'm afraid of shipping because recently a game that I pledged for upped their shipping cost. And yeah, that happens because of the shipping situation. Still doesn't feel great. And I live in one of the biggest cities in Canada. I know it's Canada, so it's still like 10 people, but still, that's big. We had to kick my aunt out of the city so we could maintain our, our population. But it's just so obvious an upsell that it just turns me off. If the Skags expansion really cost $45, as they're quoting, then the stretch goals should be available for $5 or $10 because you get that little bonus for bundling them together. So why not even allow people to purchase the stretch goals if you're calling it that way? Call it a character pack, because that's really all it is. Because I like Mordecai, he's my favorite character from the first game, but also, yeah, I want to play as Brick, who just punches everything with his fists. I want to play as Zero. I want to play as Lilith, the OG Siren. I even want to play as Claptrap, because of course I do. Because of course he was my character in the pre-sequel that I played the game through. Although really that was just because they had this oxygen mechanic, and Claptrap, since he's a robot, didn't have to worry about that, so a bonus. But to keep all of these iconic characters behind a paywall and promote it as $85, and then when people get to the campaign, you say, oh, plus another 50. What is that, like a 60% increase? It's a shitty thing to do. This game is not worth $172 Canadian plus another $50 Canadian. For me, at least, right? But for $109 Canadian and then wanting to support this IP that I like and get a bunch of all these extra characters, yeah, that might have been worth it. To almost be able to pull the trigger at sort of a lower budget area, and then just to see this obvious gotcha, but you need more, it just, you know what? It turns me off completely, and I have no problem voting with my wallet and walking away. Like, I get the additional price point, I get the costs are rising, I get that board games are expensive, and this is a luxury hobby. But when you're paying $85 US, over $100 Canadian, and you're supporting the creation of this thing, you're helping get it to this large, wide release, you're showing that there's a market for it, you're in first to support it, as is the feeling of Kickstarter, and they don't give you anything extra back. And you only get the 4 characters too, when the game makes you play with 4 characters every time. I don't know, it feels like you're missing out. They're banking on you feeling like you're missing out to get you to pledge to that higher pledge level. And as someone who graduated from FOMO University at the very middle of my class, as a FOMO MD, someone who is legally no longer allowed within 100 meters of FOMO because of that one mistake, I have to take a pass on this one, which is too bad because it could have been something to sway me, but it just feels icky to me, and so that's a no from me, dog. I just can't get on board with paywalls because that Skag expansion is definitely $45 and isn't just at that point to make you think, oh, it's only $5 more to get the bigger version. What a deal! Get out of here. So there we go. Those are my 5 reasons you shouldn't back Borderlands. Like I said, I think the game looks cool. I think if you are backing this, I think you're gonna have a good time. I think you'll probably have fun with it. But for me, I don't know, this was a tough one though, because I do think the game looks fun. But that last one just immediately set me off. Anyway, comment below your own reasons. Are you backing? Are you not? I find it's always really helpful in the comments. We get better reasons than I'm ever able to come up with because you're all fantastic. And it's also really helpful to those people who are still deciding. Down below, you can read through the comments, scroll through and see what other people have said and different viewpoints. And that's what I like about this series and this channel, is that we can all, participate in the conversation together. Wait a minute, that's not this series. That's Table Talk. Never mind, just my opinion matters. That's it. Anyway, as always, what do I know? They lost 1 customer, but they gained 6,134 currently at the other pledge level, so clearly it worked. Clearly we're here talking about it. And clearly it's only going to get bigger because Handsome Jack has not yet been unlocked, and I'm sure he's coming down the pipeline as some sort of boss or hero or maybe both. Anyway, that's it for me. Once again, my name is Chris George. Thank you so much for watching. And I don't have a catchphrase, but I was so close. Borderlands, and you ripped that from me, and I don't know if I can ever forgive you again until I play the 3rd one on PS4 right now. Okay, I gotta go. Bye.